welcome to the ITESOFT Inside Review. Thank you for joining us. This is part 3 of the 5-part series. My name's Alan Brown. I am a senior sales consultant within the organisation, and I'm going to be taking you through today's session. The overall theme has been around the top 5 things to understand about AP processing and matching. Week 1, we talked about how much time and money is actually spent on the invoice matching side of things. Week 2 was looking at and understanding how you currently match your supplier invoices. This week is week 3. We're going to talk about line item matching and why do you need that. So thank you for joining me for this. Line item matching is something that crops up in 80% of the conversations that I will have with most organisations. I say 80% because there are probably 20% of the organisations out there that we speak with where they only do header and footer, and that, as far as they're concerned, that is all they need. For a lot of other organisations that we're dealing with, they have got line items put in place and they are already dealing with line items, and that's great. But the question I've got for yourselves, especially as most organisations have got line items in place, is why? Why do you need to have line items in place? It's an interesting conversation that I have with most organisations about this. And in all honesty, it tends to get a little bit contentious. Let's be politically correct about it and say contentious rather than confrontational. And it's not that there isn't a reason for doing it. But part of the reason why I bring this up is because you're looking to move with a paradigm shift to something different. In this case, digital automation for your invoices. So therefore, as part of that paradigm shift, why are you going to carry on or potentially best case replicate what you're currently doing from a manual perspective into automation? You wouldn't do that in many other parts of the business and just replicate what you've currently got for something different that is now more automated. Okay, it makes it faster and there are benefits to that, but there are some things that you can make a radical even step change with, and that's potentially to do with line items as well. This is an area where it takes a huge amount of time around the AP process. So therefore, for most organisations that are already doing this, if we were to take out line items and the processing, the huge or significant or vast amount of time that it currently takes, that therefore gives you, the byproduct is huge time savings. Even if there's still a little bit of manual processing involved around that. Because let's think about it, most of the invoices that you have coming in at this moment in time, even with the line items, let's take the 80-20 rule for instance, because your suppliers are wanting to get product out to you so they can invoice that. They don't want to send out partial deliveries because they can't invoice for all of that. They might send multiple drop deliveries, that's another matter altogether. They want to get as much out to you as quickly as possible so they can invoice you and they get your money at a very basic level. So assuming that 80% of the invoices that come in with line items are therefore going to meet your goods receipting, and assuming your goods receipting and your goods receipting policy is done on time and done correctly, and it's also going to meet the thresholds that you've put in place around your purchase ordering, then they're going to go straight through the system. So why are we even manually dealing with these? Why is there any sort of working level that is involved around line items and dealing with them manually? So this can also therefore mean a much more significant return on your investment around automation if you go, we'll deal with line items in a different way. And we're not saying get rid of line items, I'm just saying let's deal with them and how you're dealing with them and why you're dealing with them in a different way. That allows you to get automation rates in place that you're looking for, still put safeguards in place that you need to have. So there are a number of questions that I want to be able to throw out here to yourselves to consider, to be able to conjugate on and see whether it's worthwhile doing. So for instance, one of the keys that I want to be able to ask here is why you're processing at a line level anyway. Is this purely because you've always done it this way? Is it a hangover from what you've always done? You know, you joined the organisation 5 years ago and someone said it was really important and you've carried on doing it that way because no one's told you it's not important. So is that a question that you need to go and ask in the business? Or actually maybe not even in the business, but actually maybe to your financial controller or your CFO. Is this important for our accountants? Is it important for audit? At what point or which part of the business is this important for? I get within, for instance, a manufacturing organisation, let's say it's a car manufacturer because we're all aware of cars, who've got hundreds of different individual components that come together to make one product. And they need to know how many widgets they've got because of just-in-time ordering, and they know how many they need to go on one vehicle so that they can then keep the production flow going. Great. But is that actually to do with ordering and stock levels, or is that actually to do with invoice processing and how we're dealing with things? That then brings us neatly on to my next question for you. Is this something that is really integral to your business? Now, it might be from, go back to the example of the manufacturer of cars, it might be from a production point of view. Get that, that's a given. But how does that then come back to how it's integral for AP and finance to be able to operate? Not necessarily quite sure. Especially when we take sweeping generalisation, again, the 80% rule, or 80-20 rule, that 80% of your line items are going to go through with no issues at all. And I suspect it will be higher. And when I've really dug into this with other organisations, it tends to be probably closer somewhere between 85 to 90% rather than anything else. In a lot of cases, it tends to be a combination of you've always done it this way and therefore you haven't thought really or haven't been challenged about doing it any other way. You've probably also never had the opportunity of going, could we do it another way? So is it because you've never looked at digitalising the AP process and this is a perfect time for you to be able to look at, because you're looking at automation and digitalising the AP and purchase to pay process, a way of being able to change and alter how you're dealing with the line items? Is it because you've got line item matching in place? Because historically, might be back to the hangovers again, but historically there's been a bit of a, let's be politically incorrect at this moment in time, you don't trust the business or you don't trust your suppliers, and therefore this is your way of putting some checks, controls, balances in place. It may have happened once, it may have been a huge issue X number of years ago. Do you still really need to have that in place now? Or are there other ways of being able to deal with that? So for instance, if you're going to digitalise and automate your process, aren't you going to get better reporting coming out of that? So brings me to the next point that we have. Is it a lack of internal visibility, reporting, governance around the manual processes that you currently have in place, including around your purchase orders, your goods receipting and invoicing, that by digitalising would help take out that lack of visibility and bring a lot more clarity and potentially real-time reporting into the system that hadn't been there before? This is where we're then talking about how your staff are going to be operating. Could it be something slightly left of field here, for instance? Is it a way of being able to justify the processing of your invoices and credit notes? Because a lot of organisations that have a lot of organisations that have line items in place, therefore also have a large number of credit notes in place. So that, and what I mean by that is, as the invoice comes in and the line items don't match, the automatic process that they have is we automatically ask for a credit note. And therefore we need to be able to deal with how we process the credit notes. So there are lots of questions there that I'm pushing back on you with, because This is part of what you need to be able to consider to change and improve the relationship and what you're offering to both the business internally as well as to your suppliers. So one of the things that you might want to consider as part of your digitalization capability or processing is things like a supplier portal that allows your suppliers to have greater visibility and self-service as part of the overall capability you're giving them, and giving them the ownership so that they can build their own trust. So if the issue is to do with the internal visibility, the lack of reporting, lack of governance that's in place, and therefore you need to build trust or create the opportunities for trust to happen within the business, then the real-time reporting tools that you should be looking to get as part of this would help build into it. Guys, this has been really great chat. Really enjoyed being able to speak with you about this. This is the end of part 3. We really look forward to seeing you in part 4. Thank you and have a great day.